Hey folks, I thought it would be morbidly entertaining to compare the daily activities of your life and the risk of those activities costing you that daily life against the odds of winning the lottery. You know that bi-weekly thing that happens the government feeds you into by saying, hey, give us $3 and we'll have the chance to change your life forever, and just fantasize about all the things you could do with that money. Meanwhile, the little voice, that conscious thing in the back of your head says, you know, you're more likely to die 10,000 different ways before this is ever going to happen to you. And I know not the most enlightening conversation to be had. However, at the end of this video, I'm going to share with you from an investment standpoint where you can put your money with a 99.99% chance of a rate of return, which is wildly drastically different than the lottery. So I think this is going to help a lot of people out. So in the clarity of my transparency, do the channel a favor, folks, hit that like button, and let's kick it off with this really morbid website that I found called Your Chances of Dying. Morbidly here, folks, because these are things you probably do, some of you anyways. So let's get right into this with the sports and recreation. Now, we all know that usually when we compare loss of life against the odds of things, we always go straight to skydiving. And I have done this a lot, actually, because I was trying to get my pilot license once upon a time. And hey, in the odds of a plane crash, it'd be nice to be able to bail, you know, worst case scenario, increase my odds of living and keeping that life of mine. But the odds of me dying in skydiving, about 1 in 100,000, right? Boxing, did you catch that Jake Paul fight? I mean, that is about 1 in 2,200. You get socked the wrong way. Hang gliding, something I'm not going to do. Apparently, that's really risky. Scuba diving, I'm sure many of you have been on a vacation, a nice vacation somewhere, you know, scuba diving in the ocean, checking out the coral reefs or something. Well, that's about 1 in 34,000, which is actually a lot riskier than skydiving, ironically, right? But then you got like American football, we all know is dangerous, concussions, etc. 1 in 50,000. Grand Prix, something I'm not doing, but 1 in 100, super dangerous. Motorcycling, a lot of people out there. I imagine some of you got your M1 license there, so that's about 1 in 1,000. Canoeing, for the idiots that don't pay attention to the map and end up going off a waterfall, apparently. Swimming, relatively safe, 1 in 1 million. Running and jogging, 1 in 1 million. Bicycling, something I also do a lot. Fairly dangerous, actually. It's not nearly as dangerous as motorcycling, but 1 in 140,000, guys. And then something that I never really did was bungee jumping. It's about 1 in half a million. Still safer than skydiving, of course. Base jumping, well, we all know that's deadly. Who's jumping off a base? Let's be real. Snowboarding, have you ever went snowboarding? Well, you could potentially lose that wonderful life of yours in 1 in about 2.2 million. Skiing is about 1 in 1.4 million. I think that's just because more people ski than people that likely snowboard. Mountain hiking is about 1 in 15,000. And then you get into kind of rock climbing-ish, like expert climbing, and then Nepal maybe is like 1 in 167. So they just start kind of gauging up into things that more would be bucket list, or for people that are a little bit more adrenaline junkies, like climbing above 6,000 meters in the Himalayas. Well, a lot of people don't make that one. 10 to 12 and about 100. So Himalaya is probably not the safest place to be walking, I would presume. Transportation, oh my God, guys. This is like you are more likely to unfortunately die driving to get onto a plane than you are to actually die flying these days, because that's about 1 in 6,700. My goodness. And I love the little animation here of, you know, how safe airplanes are, because it's about 1 in about 100,000 flight hours of the chances of you losing your life, which isn't the best statistic, because we all know it's insanely safe to fly. Your odds are like 1 in tens of millions of actually being a person that dies in a regular commercial flight. Whereas when it comes to things like smoking, which many people partake in, whether it's drinking, smoking, these are probably the leading causes of, well, actually, these are one of the 5 leading causes of death in North America, guys, with 22 times more likely to die from lung cancer than a non-smoker. And women are 12 times more likely to die from lung cancer than a non-smoker. Whereas if you're a lifelong smoker, you got about a 1 in 2 chances of not living after the age of 70. So you probably die before then if you're a long-term smoker. But we all know this, and it's the same thing with obesity. Absolutely toxic to the body here, folks. And the really entertaining thing is parties and games. Are you sitting at home? Are you a computer gamer? Well, congrats. The chances of you losing your life, maybe from a heart attack or a fatal level up, as they call it, is about 1 in 100 million. So congrats. Table games, about 1 in 100 million. Maybe domestic assaults, you're playing with your family, who knows what that leads into. And dance parties is just as dangerous as skydiving, probably because of drugs and alcohol as well, and bar fights. Let's be real here, folks. So if we take all of this into consideration, I live in Canada, Ontario, where we have something called the Lotto 649. They literally run these things twice a week here, folks. And this is insane to me, because when you look at the chances of you winning, first of all, 79.5% of the pool's fund goes to you, and the chances are about 1 in 13.98 million. So 1 in about 14 million. But what people don't understand that I think is interesting about the lottery lottery is that doesn't guarantee that if 14 million people play the lottery that you have a 1 in 14 million chance of winning. No. Every lottery ticket you buy, even if you bought a million of them, each one has the exact same odds of about 1 in 14 million, because the lottery doesn't work in a fair manner like, hey, if everyone buys a ticket, someone should be guaranteed to win. Now, they do have guaranteed prizes they introduce now and again, but the main lotto, that's not how it works, folks. Every single ticket has the same odds, and if you buy 10 tickets or a million tickets, your odds don't actually increase because you're only playing that ticket. Each ticket against those numbers will always be the same. Now, if there was 14 million people, and like I said, everyone bought a ticket, and one of those tickets was guaranteed to win, then your odds would truly be 1 in 14 million. But fascinating stuff behind the lottery here, folks, which is why I never play it. In fact, I literally, the last time I bought a lottery ticket was with a bunch of people at work. We all bought it as a pool because it was a fun, engaging thing to do with a bunch of folks that I enjoyed working with. However, I want to share with you right now something that will guarantee you a return that nobody talks about, and it should be talked about every time the lottery comes up, which is, hey guys, here's your chances of making money in something we call an S&P 500 index against the lottery. Because over a 20-year term period, and I know 20 years is a long time for most people, but what if I told you if you could lock some money up for 20 years that I could guarantee you would have more by the end of that 20-year period? You'd be like, okay, well, that's a long, and sometimes it won't even take that long, guys, but unfortunately there has been periods in the market where it has been flat. But luckily in the last decade, the market alone is up 242%. So this represents the 500 largest companies in the US. If you put $10,000 in, literally in 2011, today, that $10,000 would be worth over 30,000, guys. That 10,000 would be up 242%. So for every 100%, you double your money. So for the first 100%, 10 goes to 20. On the next 100%, that 20 goes to 30. And then you also have this compounded rate of effect where if you're investing dividends or if you're continuing to add money, you've been getting this incredible, juicy return. And this has been true for the last 100 years. And let's take this a step farther. That's not appealing enough to you. You want to make those millions. Well, let me put this into perspective. Let's say you had another 10,000, and while you put it in the S&P index back in 2011, you decided to work a little harder, come up with some more money, and you put it into Google stock. Well, you would have made a 689% return, turning that, 10,000 into over $60,000, $70,000 in the same time period here, folks, off a $10,000 investment. That's pretty staggering. Let's keep it going. What about Apple? Apple would have offered you a rate of return of 1,000%. You have now made over $100,000 in a decade. And these are not complicated investments, my friends. You've heard of these companies before, and they have been popular for longer than a decade now. Let's talk about Amazon. It would have given you a rate of return of 1,800. You would have almost made $200,000 on a simple $10,000 investment. You could very likely, if you were diligent, you were able to come up with $50,000 in the next decade, make some pretty intelligent decisions, could very likely be a millionaire in 10 years, but you're still going to waste all of that money buying your morning coffee and your lotto ticket when that money could severely add up in a very short period of time here, folks. I find these odds in mathematics so fascinating because when you become an investor, you have to put your emotions aside and just realize the game of odds that you are playing, and you always want to be leaning toward the future. If you are able to look to where the future is going and you are able to strategically place bets over a strategic period of time, it is unbelievably likely that you are going to be insanely wealthy in your future, which is why it's incredibly intelligent to start in your 20s if capable, or even in your early 30s. Now, if you're in your 40s, 50s, you're going to have to compound this by putting larger amounts of capital away, whereas if you're just a lot younger, guys, the compounded rate of effective return off $500 a month starting from nothing by the time in the next 20 years, I mean, just take a look at the compound calculator. It turns into a mass amount of money when you're talking about the rate of return that some of these incredible tech stocks that are going to control our lives will probably continue to offer. So in the clarity of my transparency, guys, and all this homework I present to you, I want to know what you think in that comment section below, because this is a relatively fascinating conversation to me and something I think should be put into perspective more often. So stay cool, stay awesome, guys, and I can't wait to catch you tomorrow